Hello again, I'm John Merrill and welcome to Brainstorming America. I'm delighted to be joined again by my friend Ken Rollins as we talk about issues that are important to you at the federal, at the national, of course, at the state and the regional level, as well as local issues of importance and significance. Ken, great to be back with you, my friend.
Don't leave nothing out when you cover that. You know?
No, sir.
Well, you, as the Secretary of State, you've been the National Secretary of State, and so it's not unusual for you to be doing that stuff nationwide. But for this show, the things that we're talking about are important no matter where you are in the United States or in other places.
Yes, sir.
So one of the things on the earlier shows we did, and I want to spend a little bit more time on if we could, is I didn't get your take on when we talk about the border. We didn't go into all the human trafficking and all the things that happen, but one of the things that really bothers me is the drug situation, and I don't understand why our president and the leadership has not realized what a danger that is. We got more people dying in that than we did in Afghanistan. I mean, and they're young people.
Of course we do, and it's a tragedy to think that because our borders are unsecure, these drugs have been able to be brought into the United States, and they impact families in such a negative way that it basically changes the future of that particular family, because some of the gateway drugs that are introduced enable these young people to become addicted, and then at that point they lose all realm of reality in trying to be able to function in a normal society, in a normal environment, and they have to have the drugs to continue to even live. And so when that happens and they become just enamored with having the one possession of the next drug item after the next, it puts them in such a position they become vulnerable to the cartels and to all of these individuals that are trying to sell them this paraphernalia that makes them weaker and weaker and weaker, and oftentimes ends up with their demise and their death.
Well, the one thing that over the years in my life I've seen, well, they're hanging with the wrong crowd and this kind of thing, but these younger generation are being exposed to the fentanyl, and they don't know it. A lot of it, the different colored pills, and I've watched this play out. If you really want to get you a good drug thing going where you want to kill a bunch of Americans, you get you a drug that'll do just what fentanyl's doing. And you make it in pretty little capsules so the little ones will get attention to it. And there's nothing in the red, pink, and blue, and yellow is going to hurt you. So they take that, and they say once you take it, that's it. And I'm watching that play out for real, how they can get a younger generation addicted, hoping that they'll grow up and be bigger. And in order to get the money for these things, they're learning to be good thieves. They steal from mama and grandma and everybody, everything they get their hands on. These kids are learning to be thieves to support their habit. And so I just think with our leadership in this country, and I'm pulling no punches, the Biden administration, why can they sit back there, and you said earlier on your laurels, why can they sit back there and watch a generation of kids being killed, and they could stop it? I mean, it's something, it's not like they would throw your hands up. They can fix it.
Well, they need to fix it, because if they don't fix it, it's going to continue to cause the demise of our country as we know it. And as we continue to accept this as just an everyday common practice of doing business in the United States, it makes us more and more vulnerable each and every day. And we have to have the borders protected. We have to have the people that are coming across the borders examined and make sure that they're not bringing these illegal or illicit drugs that they're just trying to sell in order to gain additional resources to do other nefarious activities. We've got to make sure that our young people are being dissuaded from taking a part of this. I remember back in the 1980s, Nancy Reagan's campaign to just say no is something that we need to go back to. It's something that we need to have Dr. Jill Biden embracing and saying this is one way to educate people. People were saying that was too simple a message. just saying no to something is not too simple a message. It helps you understand the reason why you don't need to engage in that type behavior, you don't need to engage in that type activity, and you don't need to engage in those type illicit or illegal drugs that can cost you your life.
Yeah, and that's the other part that I left out on our earlier shows was some of the people coming across the border. We got terrorists coming in here from all over, from Middle East and everywhere you think of, and they're gotaways, people that are not even accounted for. And I watched them on the what do you call it, Judiciary Committee investigations or inquiries or whatever. They'll ask the Secretary of Homeland Security, is our border secured? Yes. We know they're not. We watch them all the time. You know, you got to turn on Fox News, you'll see what I saw when I left home this morning. And you know that these terrorists that with one thing on their mind, that want to kill Americans, that are coming through that border, and they're coming into the different parts of Alabama, and they're going up in Chicago. They're going all over this United States, and they're setting up webs and little pods, and they're going to be big terrorist organizations like Al Qaeda and all that other.
Absolutely.
And so we've got to do something about our southern border thing. They tell us that you got to go to a break. I don't know whether to go or not, but yeah, I guess we will. We'll take a break, come back, get you a pen, might find something you need. And welcome back to Brainstorming America. Ken Rollins here, and we're talking with the Alabama Secretary of State, John Merrill. And John, another point I wanted to bring up, I never discussed this with you either. When Trump was in there, they came up with this. I was watching something that, you know, you heard something like when pigs fly. You heard that old saying.
Yes, sir.
And then when there's peace in the Middle East.
Right.
You know, I almost seen that under Donald Trump. We all almost seen that with that Abraham Accord.
Sure.
And so I don't know where we are with that. But what were your thoughts on that?
Well, look, when you think about what we're trying to see occur with peace in the Middle East, this discussion is as old as Abraham, and it goes back to the days of when the nations were first established, whether you're talking about Isaac and the children that were born to him, and the biblical references that we have that many of us know so well, being in the Bible Belt. But a time for peace in the Middle East is something that will probably not be seen in our lifetime or any lifetime, because the conflict that exists there is as old as the Middle East itself. It's also something that you need to understand is not going to be resolved just because a few politicians get together, hold hands, and have pictures made. I know many of us will remember back to the Camp David peace accords in 1978 when President Carter called Anwar Sadat and Menachem Begin together to discuss the things that were so important to Egypt and to Israel and what needed to be done and what should be done in order to have a peace that we had not seen before. They were able to sign those documents, and they were able to enter into a different level than we had ever seen in the past. But slowly but surely, things would continue to deteriorate. And now, one of the things that President Trump did that many other presidents had talked about for decades and decades and decades, going back to 1940s when Israel became a sovereign state, and Alabama was the first state in the Union to recognize Israel as a sovereign nation, a sovereign state, but to move the capital of the country from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. And of course, President Trump was the only one that ever did that, even though it had been promised by many presidents prior to his time in the White House. So I think it's important to note peace in the Middle East is not something that is going to be easily resolved, because it's never been done in the history of the world. But it is something that we need to give attention to, but we don't need to think that it can happen just because a politician says, now that I'm in office, we're going to make it happen.
Yeah. Well, that was that was something that I really put a lot of hope on, because I seen people talking to Saudis and the Israelis, and then I said, I don't know, I'm skeptical of Qatar,
Sure.
or whatever you want to
Sure.
call it. I'm skeptical of them because they're everything they do seems to be hinge on the mighty dollar.
But Ken, one of the best books that's ever been written about this particular topic, President Carter wrote. President Carter's written more than 30 books, and most of those are just outstanding conversation pieces and historical pieces that educate you on a particular topic. But The Blood of Abraham, which is the book that he wrote about this particular part of our discussion today, is something that I think every American needs to read. President Carter is a very well educated person, and he has concentrated a great portion of his life in working toward peace in the Middle East. But I think it's a good book to read.
Carter or something else. Did you ever meet him?
Yes, sir. I met President Carter on a couple of occasions.
I got to introduce him one time down in Beaumont, Texas, and in between, he drove the Secret Service crazy. He'd jump on the back of that old Lincoln,
Yes, sir.
and it wasn't like kind of got now. It's not like what they call it, the Beast.
Right.
It wasn't the Beast. It had a convertible with down.
Yes, sir.
Like John Kennedy had.
Yes, sir.
And he'd jump up on the back of that bumper back there and waving at everybody, and they're just beside themselves. And they told me that, I mean, they would come out at the club, Secret Service would, to get to know people. They're there. They entrenched themselves with us a week or so. I was furnished entertainment to keep the crowd at the airport while they went to Port Arthur. So I had to make sure when Carter came back, he had people there.
Yes, sir.
So I got to know those guys there, but he scared them to death. He'd run out there. He wanted to be with the people. We've run out of time for this show, and I want to make sure we get all these things covered.
Well, I will say this. One of the things you asked about meeting President Carter, I want to make sure that I shared this. The first time that I had the opportunity to visit with him was at Maranatha Baptist Church there in Plains, Georgia, where he taught Sunday school for so many years. In July of 1995, I took my 5-year-old son and one of my closest friends over there, and we spent the night at a bread and breakfast, and then drove from Americus up to Plains, and had an opportunity to hear him teach Sunday school, and he did a tremendous job. But he has written, like I said, so many books and talked about so many different topics, but he is definitely an expert in many areas.
When I was introduced, I told him I used to live in Georgia. I lived in Marietta, and that started another conversation. But he could relate on a lot of subjects. He's a lot smarter than the average bear.
Well, he's a nuclear engineer.
Oh yeah,
from Annapolis.
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
But Billy didn't help him any.
No, sir.
But we run out of time. I don't know what I'm leaving off here, but we need to drain the swamp.
Yes, sir.
We know how to do that.
Yes, sir.
But Trump had it drained down pretty dang well, and so I appreciate you coming on here with me, and us doing this. And
I think we're going to come back for one more segment right
You
after
think
this.
we are?
But I always love to shake
Why
your hand,
don't they
brother.
tell me that?
It's all right.
Oh man, I would appreciate it. Well, stay where you are. Get a pen. We'll be right back. Bless my heart. And welcome back to Brainstorming America. Ken Rollins, and we're here with Secretary of State John Merrill. And John, when we went to break, I thought we were through. I was ready to get out of here. It's cold out there, but I got some things I want to talk to you before we lose you today, and that is in your bailiwick, the thing that you would know about.
Yes, sir.
I can't come up with a word. What's a bailiwick? What is
That's
it?
good.
Is it close
Yes,
enough?
sir.
We'll talk about you as a Secretary of State. This is nationwide. The voter rolls. I mean, I don't see what I see as elections now. Don't even resemble what I grew up thinking that election day was. Now it's election week and election month. And one of the things is the clean up the voter rolls. Is that where people have just there's dead people on there and that kind of thing?
Absolutely. And you have to be diligent about that work, Ken. You have to make sure that each and every day you're giving the kind of attention that's necessary to ensure that you're going to have an accurate, up-to-date, complete voter roll that has integrity and gives the kind of credibility necessary to have a safe and secure election. And that's one of the commitments that we made when I was serving as Alabama Secretary of State, that we wanted to ensure that each and every eligible U.S. citizen that's a resident of Alabama would have the opportunity to become a registered voter and to obtain a photo ID. And we registered more than 2.1 million voters during the 8 years that I served as Alabama Secretary of State, resulting in more than 3.7 million registered voters, a state record, were registered in the state of Alabama. But you have to be diligent about cleaning those rolls up each and every day, because we only want eligible U.S. citizens who are residents of Alabama to be on the voter rolls.
Clean them up every day. Now, this is where you could see somebody say, oh, there's something going on in Alabama. They had 3,260,000. Now they got 2,480,000. You scrubbed the rolls and got all those dead people on
Well,
there.
we're certainly going to remove people that don't need to be there. And we removed more than 1.6 million people from the voter rolls that needed to be removed because they moved away, they passed away, or they've been put away. And whenever that happens, they need to come off the voter rolls. Because, again, we want each and every eligible U.S. citizen that's a resident of Alabama to be registered to vote and have a photo ID.
Do you know any other states that does that?
Not as well as Alabama, but I will say this. We've got other states in the Union, California, New York, several other states that have not done a good job of removing people that are not supposed to be on the rolls. And that's very disappointing and discouraging, because you cannot have safe, secure, fair, and free elections if you don't have safe, secure voter rolls.
Well, common sense would say to leave people on there who are not eligible to vote, can't vote, they're dead or whatever, don't worry about it, they're not going to be voting. But that's where the shenanigans start.
And certainly
because
where
there
they
is
can
a
start,
name.
especially when you're talking about these states that use the vote by mail component, where they will mail ballots to individuals that are on the voter rolls that may have passed away, may have moved out of state. And when those ballots actually go to that particular location, a good citizen may take that and properly respond to that particular entity and say, these people should be removed from the rolls because they're not going to be living at this address anymore. They passed away or they moved out of state. But some people with nefarious intent could actually vote those ballots and return them, and then they count against those eligible ballots that were actually passed out according to state law, and reducing the influence of the eligible voter.
When they were doing the mail-outs, they mail them to everybody. I was thinking about some of these duplexes and apartment complexes where someone would have lived there, but a ballot would be delivered to that box. Someone else be living there now. Now they got theirs and the previous person.
No doubt about it. And look, we know this, and we've got great people that live in Calhoun County, that live in Cleveland County, that live in Randolph County and Talladega County, all around where we are today. But we also know that if we had the vote by mail component in the state of Alabama, like some of these other states, then some of the things that are happening in those other states would happen in Ranburne, would happen in Heflin, would happen in Micaville, would happen in Ohatchee, would happen in Piedmont, would happen in Rabbit Town, would happen all across this area where we live, where there'd be a pickup truck going down the county road picking up these ballots out of the mailboxes that were delivered and being taken to another location and being voted on behalf of the person of the intended instead of the one that was supposed to be receiving the ballot. And that's a problem, and that's the reason why we don't need that in Alabama, and we never need it in Alabama.
I agree. But you've mentioned Micaville, all them different places. I never heard of it. But anyhow, I mentioned the drain the swamp, but the red tape that this country is dealing with is holding us back in so many areas. I noticed in Huntsville was a good example of that. But your thoughts on that?
Well, look, the bureaucratic red tape that has existed before has caused a lot of problems. But what we need are people who are interested in having government work on behalf of the people. Just like in the Office of the Secretary of State, when we were there for the 8 years that we were there, we had two mantras we tried to live by. Number one was to make it easy to vote and hard to cheat. Number two, we wanted to make sure that people knew that we were moving at the speed of business, not the speed of government, because so many people associate things that are associated with government as being very slow, and not deliberate, just slow. And what we wanted to do was to make it easy to vote and hard to cheat, and to let people know we're no longer moving at the speed of government, we're moving at the speed of business.
And that speed of business. I remember your first story about you that I thought was how long it took to get a business license.
Yes, sir.
You chopped it from what? We had a
Well,
minute.
7 to 9 months behind, down to same day, and we did that for more than 6.5 years. That's one of our greatest accomplishments.
I would think so, because you really want these businesses to come here, but they were being taxed, so to speak.
Yes, sir.
It was hurtful.
Well, whenever you're delaying that, Ken, you're delaying progress. You're
Right.
delaying people from being able to create jobs, and people being able to assume the position, and people being able to receive a check for the great work they're doing each and every day for that provider.
Well, they're telling us that we've run out of time, and I appreciate you coming up here and being with us again.
Thank you, Ken.
And I enjoy doing this show. The folks out there, I hope they're getting a lot out of what we're talking about, because that's the intent, is for them to
No
be
doubt
inspired.
about it. Yes,
so
sir.
we got to go, and we'll see you next time on Brainstorming America. See ya.